So we have lots of different nurseries that we work with here. So we'll be talking about what that looks like, as well as the process. It's great to know what it's like over here, but how do we get there? How do you come here? What the communities and events are like, ANZUK and some of the nursery partnerships we have, and as well answering any good questions along the way. So yeah, please, as Liv said earlier, use the chat function, pop your mic off, and let us know. We will be able to help out.
Amazing. So yeah, just a quick, I guess, recap of ANZUK education. So globally, we have over 29 offices. So yeah, 9 in Australia, 2 in New Zealand, 4 in the UK. So in terms of the UK, which we're talking about today, we have London, Surrey, which is just south of London. You got Bristol, which is on the southwest of England and down that kind of coastline there. We have Newport, which is in Wales, super close to Cardiff. We also support regionally in England as well. So yeah, if you're looking for options either locally before you go to the UK or once you come back, we're there to support your 360 journey. And yeah, ANZUK, our values, our purpose, and our promise. So we have Be Great, which is our belief, equity, growth, relationships, empower, attitude, and team. That really just sums up our agency and our company as a whole. Always creating exceptional experiences for educators and students. That's at the heart of what our company, what we do. It's why we do it. And our goal is to place the right teacher or right educator in the classroom every time. Right place, right time.
Lovely. So that's a little bit about ANZUK, but what's it going to be like when you come to London? Obviously, working in early childhood back in Australia, your day-to-day in an early years sector is very similar to what it would look like here. Again, nurseries are very typically open a little bit later than Australia. You do find it quite hard to find a coffee before 7 a.m. in the UK, which is unfortunate. But most of the nurseries kind of open from 7:30, and then run till about 6:30. And that's your typical opening hours. So depending on your shift will depend on what your day looks like, just like Australia or New Zealand. So you always start breakfast, helping the children settle in, welcoming into the nurseries. Again, very play-based learning. Seeing what the early years foundation stage looks like and developing that within the nursery. You'll find in London that a lot of the nurseries don't actually have a garden space, or if they do, it is very small and limited. So you find that you'll go on quite a few more excursions, quite a few more trips. The good thing is the tube runs absolutely basically everywhere in London. So you will find that if you do commute anywhere in the middle of the day, you may be on a tube with a group of nurseries children in high-vis jackets, or you support them going to the park that's right next to the nursery. So it is very exciting to support that, go out quite a little bit more. Again, you'll get lunch, sleep time, or older children, it's more like circle time and participating in that. Afternoon tea and all of that. So it is very, very similar to what a typical day would look like in early childhood in a setting there compared to what it would look like here. So really just getting into it and enjoying it. So there's lots of different locations that we can work with in London. So you might know that actually I really want to work somewhere that is a little bit more leafy green. So we go, okay, fine, great. Let's see if we can support you in Southeast London. There's a gorgeous park there that we work with the nursery right up the road from. Or you go, I want to be right in the hustle and bustle of the city. So then I can go for my Thursday afternoon pints and really get into what the London atmosphere is like. So there's lots of different locations where these are just a touch of some of the nurseries. You can kind of see that they are spread across all of London, and there's lots of different boroughs that you can kind of work with or work in. But again, I know I live southeast London and then commute into work. So it's really common to kind of use the public transport here to your advantage. I haven't driven in over 4 years, which is terrifying. When I went back to Australia and tried to drive, I think it was terrifying for everyone else, not just me.
Yeah, I was always southwest when I lived over there. So I was in Wimbledon, and then for my first year, which is awesome. And then I was in Battersea, which is like a lovely park. So for my second year, so but yeah, great transport options. Yeah, tube, bus. If you want to bike, you can bike if you want.
Yeah, I cycle to work. So
love it.
luckily have a 15-minute cycle to work.
Oh, that's so good.
Just like Australia or New Zealand, the statutory framework here also has ratios. The ratios here are a little bit different. In a nursery, you can have 50% of your educators can be unqualified. So with those, they are not counted in ratio. So what we're looking at to do is we're looking to support those that are qualified and those that do have that experience coming into a nursery, which is then what we look at what that ratio looks like. So you've got your 0 to 2 years, which is your 1 to 3, so 1 educator to every 3 children. Quite nice. In Australia, I'm pretty sure it's 1 to 4. In the 2 to 3 range, it is the 1 to 4 ratio. And then for 3 to 5-year-olds, it's the 1 to 8. So really lovely class sizes. And normally you'll find that nursery settings here are a little bit smaller. You're not going to find those larger settings, as normally they're in like renovated church buildings, or they're in a kind of, most buildings are older than Australia here. So you will find they are very much in a smaller building, and there's not as many purpose-built centres.
Amazing. So yeah, why move to the UK? I'm sure everyone's kind of got their reasons, and feel free to pop them in the chat to why you would like to, looking to go to the UK. I know for me, my main one was life experience. So yeah, and that definitely comes from living overseas. I didn't really know anyone when I moved over there. So yeah, making friends from all over the world. I did a Kentucky essentially when I moved over, met some friends that way. And one of my now best friends on that bus trip, which was crazy to think about. Obviously, yeah, travel within the UK, Europe, like it's right on your doorstep. It's insane. We have an awesome community through ANZUK as well. Pre-departure events before you leave Australia, and then as well once you touch down in the UK as well. Great Facebook group and whatnot, and just the whole global community that we have. Some people again kind of want to go over for career development. Teaching and working overseas is really highly regarded. So when you do come back, if you do ever come back, that is highly regarded. It's usually a reference from a nursery manager for that future employment for your next step, and great PD options as well. And definitely kind of touching on that life experience part, the personal growth, stepping out of your comfort zone. Definitely that's just what happens when you go over there. I'm sure, Alyssa, you can attest to that. You're developing, more cultural awareness. I'm from a super small town in New Zealand, so moving to London, which has more people in it that live there than New Zealand, is definitely crazy. And yeah, just the experience of living in another country.
Yeah, 100%. I moved over here, 4 years ago, with all intentions of moving back home. I don't see moving back home anytime soon.
You're still there.
Yeah, it's still there, exactly. And when needed, I can pop back. But honestly, it changes your views on everything, education. Although it's very similar practice, it is again so different culturally. And then also you can pop over to Italy for the weekend and get a nice Tuscany tan.
2 hours on the plane.
Exactly.
Yeah. You can't get that here.
No, unfortunately not. But again, it then looks at like when the best time to arrive is. So although we say summer has finished, this is probably one of the hottest weeks we've had the whole year. It's currently 32 degrees in London today, which is very hot. I say for Australia, clearly. But there's lots of different times to come over. So I'd like to throw a quick poll out. When are you if you are looking to go over to the UK, do you want to pop into the chat when you think would be the best time that you'd like to come out? You can always chat about that. So you've obviously got an academic year in the UK. So in nurseries or early childhood settings, it is a 52-week run program. We normally don't close over the summer holidays. Unfortunately, we don't get those big breaks. In the UK, it is very similar, but the school year, academic year, starts in September, which is a little bit different. It's very throwing. It throws you off a little bit. So all the children going into reception, so prep, start in September. So those transitional periods happen over the summer holidays. So I moved over in Jan, Caitlin. Great time of the year, a little bit cold, a little bit dark, but still a very good time. So there's lots of different times that we can support you coming over. If you do fancy coming over in January, it really does depend on where you're wanting to work, where you're wanting to go, if you're wanting to travel. There's lots of different things to factor in. Again, you've got your bank holidays, so your public holidays. So you can time it with those because you get your days off for that. So you can time your travel around then as well if you fancied. So just things to think about when moving over. So another great option we have, so we have lots of different work options, but one of our big partnerships that we have right now is the London Early Years Foundation, or LEAF for short. So LEAF are a charitable enterprise who have 40 nurseries across London. So quite a lot of boroughs covered there. So if you kind of know an area that you're interested in or not really sure of an area, we are working with LEAF to kind of support you in that journey over with a confirmed job opportunity before arriving. So you will have a confirmed placement contract on arrival. So you have a cohort of educators coming over in January already that are planning to start all together. They're in separate nurseries, but they're going to do their induction together. And basically what happens is they've already interviewed, they've already got a contract signed, and now it is just getting them ready to work. So when they do land in London, they can then start the next week with LEAF and go straight into a nursery and understand that they have a full-time role or a part-time role ready. They know the salary that they're going to be getting. They know the area that they will be working in. So they'll be able to find a location to live, either an easy commute from there or in that exact area. So it's a really great partnership to kind of look at if you were wanting a confirmation of employment before arriving in the UK. Really similar nursery settings to what kind of you would see in Australia. And really just a great partnership. So if you were looking at a full-time or confirmation of employment before arriving, a really great option. But if you were kind of looking for other alternative options, we also support that as well. So kind of looking at your work options, we do our day-to-day supply work. So you would be employed through us with ANZ UK, alternatively through LEAF. So you'll be employed through us. We have an app that lets you pop in your availability. So if you do know that you're popping over to Ireland for a long weekend, you can put in our calendar that you're not available Thursday, Friday, and on the other days of the week, we'll try and get you out for those days. For this one, it's great because you get to go and trial lots of different nurseries within London. So you might be in one nursery one day, which is a Montessori-based nursery, and the next day you're trialing what a private day nursery looks like. So it's a really good way to test and trial lots of different nursery settings here. Again, you will build lots of relationships with different in nurseries and educators, get their interest in the local area, but then opportunities to move into contract roles. So the good thing is you can go in a block booking or a long-term cover where it might be for 1 month, you're doing 3 days consecutively at this one nursery. And you might absolutely love it. We hope you do. And that would then turn into a consistent long-term booking, and you may be able to stay there for a year or however long that contract looks like. Alternatively, we have the short-term contracts, which is where you would be settled for 3 to 6 months in one early year setting, where you would then become seen as one of the nursery staff members, where you would be in there each day, knowing the role, knowing what the day-to-day looks like. Great routine, you'll get consistency with your travel, but then again, you're still involved with the ANZ UK community. So you're always going to have us here. We're always going to be able to support whether you do take a long-term contract or a permanent contract, or even just day-to-day. There's always that open hand for the invite to come and join our social events, or give us a call and just say, hey, I'm really needing a good coffee. Where do I go? And then, as discussed, you've got your permanent contract. So the partnership with LEAF is a great contract where you can commit to 1 to 2 years. They do part-time contracts as well. So you can do that or maybe only want 4 days a week and have that 4-day-a-week contract. So you would really have that chance of further career development, as it then is there a chance to grow into room leader positions, deputy positions, and experiences with that. Again, there is a full benefits package. So they do offer a relocation bonus and a qualification bonus, which is quite nice when you're moving to a new country.
Yes, definitely. That definitely helps.
Yeah, but talking about qualifications, in the UK, the qualifications are something different. So when we're looking at qualifications, we do need to do something which is called a qualification recognition. So there is an online portal called ECTIS, which is very similar to, in Australia, what would be a CEQA. So we really encourage all of our overseas educators to apply for their qualification recognition before leaving their country. So normally talking about Australia, a Certificate 3 or a diploma in early childhood education and care will usually transfer over to a UK level 3. As a level 3 in the UK, you can be anything from an educator, like an assistant educator, all the way up to a manager or room leader role. So it is very, very similar to what that looks like in Australia. And it's really something that we support. So we've had an educator that's just popped in there, Cert 3 and diploma, and has been successful with their recognition coming back as a level 3. So when they come over in they're coming over in January, they're going straight into a role because they have already got that qualification. And then if you do have your bachelor or your grad diploma teacher, you're then up to a level 6. And normally if you are fully registered, you can do what's called a QTS, so a qualified teacher status, which is free to apply, and would then allow you to be counted in that ratio as well. And then if you're master trained, you then got to a level 7. So there's lots of different processes and levels here. And this is something that we are well versed in. So all of this is just a jumble of words. We're here to help. We're here to really support you in that, what that qualification may mean for you and what that means for ratio, and supporting in the rooms.
Amazing. And yeah, so like Alyssa just touched on, we do have a relocation bonus as well, ANZUK. So yeah, that comes in the form of a relocation bonus of £500. And that just means that you're signed a contract before you leave Australia or New Zealand. And once you've worked that term, then you'll be paid out there that £500 as well. That's also a really good option. It definitely pays for hopefully all of your flight. I'm not sure if flights are at the moment, if not nearly all of it. But yeah. But yeah, visa requirements. I know Dixie before you just mentioned visas, and that definitely is the number one question we get asked. So I'd say the most common visa that people do go over to the UK on, it's called the Youth Mobility Scheme visa. That's what I was on when I went over, and essentially it's available to Australian, New Zealand, Canadian citizens, and you can apply before your 31st birthday. They have got the free trade agreement coming into play, and it comes into play at the end of January 31st next year, and that's going to be going up to under 36, and it's going to be going up to a 3-year visa. So at the moment it's a 2-year visa, so yeah, you can work and live and travel freely within that 2-year period. There's a bit of a cost to the visa. It's around, yes, £1,199. Within that, it sounds like a lot, which it is, but within that, you're also paying for your healthcare surcharge. So in Australia, we have Medicare. In the UK, they have the NHS. That's their national health system. Just means that the doctor's free, dentist is really cheap, so you're fully covered by all those things. So that's the most common. Another option is the ancestry visa, and that's if you have one or more grandparent that was born in the UK, and you can go through that process. It's a 5-year visa, so and there's no age limits on that, which is great. I had a few friends who started on that youth mobility scheme visa and then went and did their ancestry visa for that extra 5 years. But yeah, other options, you've got your UK passport, which is like the golden ticket. They have the HPI visa, which is a high potential visa, and that's only if you've graduated from the University of Melbourne or University of Queensland. They're the only 2 unis in Australia. There's a few others, obviously, across America and Canada. And then the other visa is a skilled worker visa, which isn't currently an option, unfortunately, for early childhood / primary educators. It's largely secondary and educators that teach, science or maths, or like a second language. So yeah, hopefully that does answer some questions. And we do have a visa support service based here in Australia, and they can help any educator going over on either that youth mobility scheme visa or the ancestry visa. But yeah, hopefully if you have any questions, please feel free to send them through. We can touch on them at the end. But with some great resources and blogs which we can share with everyone, and that will be included in the follow up of this as well webinar. But yeah, so in terms of steps of your journey, everyone's journey looks quite different. Some people I know speak to today, they're going over next week. Some people aren't going over for like 3-5 years. So this is just a general guideline. Essentially, you'll have initial contact with someone in our New Zealand or Australian team. So like myself here in Australia, we'll talk you through, your visa, any questions you have, accommodation, all those things, pay, etc., and all that jazz. And then the next step would be to us popping in touch with our UK team, so someone like Alyssa, and our early years team over there, and that's from the 12-month mark. So yeah, and they'll have chat to you about any roles, talking to you, any questions that you might have, and from there you can also have the option for an interview for a permanent role if that's what you're looking to do work-wise over there. Yeah, and in the lead up, I'd say it's every 2 months you have a video call or a phone call with your UK consultant, and then in the lead up, like when you're due to arrive, I'd say every 4 to 6 weeks. And then we also have a compliance team who work in the background. So a few moving parts, but the compliance team are awesome. They start that process 2 months before you're due to arrive, and start working in the UK. Ideally, you leave Australia, New Zealand before you're all cleared for work before you leave, which is great. So you can touch down, and then you can get into work straight away if that's what you're wanting. Some people want to travel first and then go into work. Everyone's super different. And within that compliance aspect, you'll also have a registration with your consultant, like Alyssa, and just confirm all of your details and things. And then, cleared for work. And then you're in the classroom or in the nursery, wherever you might be. But yeah, that process timeline looks different for everyone. But yeah, that's just a rough guideline for everyone's journey, for the journey. But yeah, I guess why ANZUK, everyone hears about us through differently, referrals, Instagram, TikTok, we've had a few people from. But yeah, we have so many resources, our blog page, we've got so many info packs, area guides, where in London you should live. If you want to live in Southwest, where in Southwest you can live. We also provide awesome PD opportunities as well. Like we mentioned, a Facebook group, which we'll also include in our follow-up email, a link to that. So definitely join that. Great way to meet people, which ties into our events aspect. We've got our pre-departure event here in Melbourne in 2 weeks, and it's open to anyone that's heading over to the UK the next 6 months or so. We do have them every school holidays. Awesome way to meet people. You honestly never know who you're going to meet at these events, so definitely would recommend coming. That 360 support, like I mentioned before, you have obviously your Australian or New Zealand consultant, and then you have a UK consultant. Timelines can be a tricky thing, UK and New Zealand ones. So you want someone where you're based. And local and global opportunities as well. Whether you want to do a bit of work locally before you head off to the UK, and likewise when you do come back, if you do come back from the UK, we can help you with work, whatever that might look like for you. And we also have an awesome partnership with Kentucky, which is what I mentioned earlier. It's how I met one of my now best friends. And this is an ongoing partnership with them. You get 5% off any tour that you book, which is awesome. I did one for 4 weeks, and I think it was about 16 countries, which is a lot, but it was well worth it. And we do have a hashtag going away with ANZUK competition running at the moment, and it's going for the rest of the year. So you can post your travel picture, even if you're still in Australia, use a hashtag, and we have monthly prizes and stuff. Which is awesome.
Grand. Well, I feel like we've covered quite a fair bit in regards to early years in the UK. We've absolutely gone through it. Have we got any burning questions? No questions, a silly question. We'd love to be able to help. If anyone has,
feel free to pop them in the chat, or turn your microphone off or your video. Like I mentioned, we'll also be sending a follow-up email by the end of this week, and that will include a recording of this webinar as well as that link to the Facebook group and our information pack. Next step would be, I'm not sure when everyone's looking to go. I know, Caitlin, you mentioned January. I think you may have spoken to Matilda already yesterday. The next step would be booking a call with one of our consultants, even if you're looking to go in 3 years.
We'll still be here, so we'll be able to support.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mimi. Just had a question. I'm an ECT. I have about 2 years experience, and I had a graduate diploma. I understood that when we were talking about registration, I will be qualified as a level 6. I already have an AITSL in Australia, but my question is, will I be able to teach prep in UK, or is it like mostly for level 7 and up? Thank you.
So with your fully registered qualification, so if you're Bachelor of Early Childhood, is it that you're studying? Yeah.
Yes.
Um, Perfect. Yeah, then you will be able to teach prep. It is reception. You can teach up to, I believe it's Key Stage 1, so I believe it's up to year 3 here. And as an overseas teacher, you will be registered. I think you can teach 3 years without that QTS as well.
Is it
qualified teacher status?
Yeah. Is that the AITSL registration or is it for the VIT ones?
Will be for like a VIT equivalent. Yeah. So in the UK, they have, it's called QTS, which is the qualified teacher status.
Yeah.
And that's essentially like the VIT equivalent. But you don't need to have that when you go over to the UK. You can teach in the UK for up to 4 years as an overseas trained teacher. If you can get it, that's great, but you can only apply for it once you've got your full VIT. So I'm not sure if that will be the case or not. It is free to do, so you can do that. But yeah, you don't need it.
Oh, fair enough. I'm actually planning to get my VIT. I'm fully registered by end of this year, but I'm like obviously VIT registered.
Yeah.
But yeah, when we're talking about AITSL, which is like the registration in Australian teaching, that one is I already got that one. Yeah.
Yeah, that will be fine.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, awesome. In nurseries, you are required to have your QTS if you are a bachelor trained, then your counted ratio. Unfortunately, the overseas teaching part doesn't quite transfer to nursery settings. The 3 years, which is a little bit silly, but it does for schools. Again, the joys of early childhood sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, great question. Does anyone else have any other questions? Anything at all? It can be about life in the UK or early years related.
I was just going to ask what some of those acronyms were that you were rattling off then. Sorry.
Yes, sorry. No, apologies. What would name an acronym? I've thrown a few around. That is, apologies for being here for a while now.
VIT, yeah, just whatever you guys just went through in that last.
Yeah, so VIT is Victorian Institute of Teaching. That's like your teacher's registration for when you're in Victoria. Each state across Australia have a different one. But yeah, that's the equivalent. I would just mention that because I'm in Melbourne, so we're all familiar with the VIT where I am here. But yeah, everyone's got a different equivalent in different states.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, so sorry, I just came in a tad late, so I'm sorry I'm asking questions.
No, you're all good.
No, please.
So you're saying like in nursery work, which is like that kindergarten equivalent in Australia, that all
long daycare.
Yeah, like for example, like I work for at the moment a non-for-profit kindergarten, and we actually run school terms and like school hours as well. So is there anything like that available over in the UK, or is it all sort of in this private nursery setting?
Yeah, of course. So there's lots of different nurseries here. So you, again, very similar to Australia, you've got your long daycare centres, which are open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. You've got your term time only settings, which are very similar to kind of what sounds like you're working in at the moment, where they are only open for kind of school hours. They close over the term holidays, and when you do get those school holidays off. Again, like Australia, they're not as common, but they are kind of around, like the sessional kindergartens. You've got your family-run daycares, what they're called here, where they are just that little bit smaller and a little bit more community-based. You've obviously got your chained nurseries as well, where there are quite a few. They are probably the long daycare settings. So there's lots of different ones, and we kind of work with you to see what your preference is. I know everyone has their own different teaching pedagogies and practices. My favourite is to go into a setting that is very regional and Amelia based. And if I can find a nursery that's very similar to that, I really prefer to do that because that's how I best teach. As a qualified educator. And I know some of the nurseries we work with follow a different practice where they're like, okay, well, maybe that's not going to be the best fit for you. Let's see if we can find a nursery that matches what your pedagogy is like.
Okay, yeah, that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So do like kindergarten teachers in those settings get paid similar to a teacher's wage? Like they do in Australia, like so for example, like I get paid a salary which is equivalent to someone who works in a primary school at the moment.
So each nursery has obviously a different kind of pay scale. So there isn't a blanketed pay rates sheet kind of for all of the UK for early years, unfortunately, as there is for schools. Depending on where you go and what you do teach. If you are, so we work with a nursery school is what they're called, which is basically just a day nursery, and they're only 3 roles above, I believe, and term time only. And we have a kinder teacher that's been placed there, and it is a teacher's salary that she has gone in on. But then there's other nurseries that would pay a teacher's salary a little bit lower than what a school would. But obviously we work with you to understand what your salary expectations are and kind of look at what the market is here and go, okay, yep, completely understand. This is what you're looking for. This is kind of what it would look like in the UK. Obviously working in the UK to Australia, the salaries do differ a little bit to kind of what the expectations would be in Australia. But we try and match that here with the kind of teacher scale.
As well. Okay, yeah, no, that makes complete sense. There was something else that was just on the tip of my tongue, but whether or not I've lost it. Oh, so the nurseries that you work with, they are predominantly in and around London. Do you have any sort of kindergartens or nurseries that you work with that aren't sort of as close to London, something that's more regional?
So at the moment, majority of our nurseries are within London. In saying that, London is quite big. So working in a nursery out in Teddington, for example, would be quite regional. But unfortunately, working with the Surrey team and things like that, there are definitely opportunities within early years, but that is majority normally in a school setting. So a lot of the schools do have early years within it, so whether that be the reception class, so the equivalent to prep, or like a kindergarten class in a school can be supported. So obviously, as ANZUK UK, we all talk to each other's regions. So if you are looking to go to Wales, we'd support you in that journey and see how we can find you work there.
Okay, yeah, no worries at all. I think Matilda pretty much like summed up my questions yesterday, but I was hoping to get something around like the Manchester area, and you guys don't really have access to that at this point, do you?
We don't have a whole lot of work in Manchester at the moment, but I mean, we could see what we could do. No, I do really enjoy London and kind of what it has to offer here, but at the moment in Manchester, we haven't branched out exactly all the way out there just yet.
Okay, yeah, no worries, that's fine. Yeah, that's probably like, so that's another question. Like, for example, like in the kindergartens here in Australia, we work off like the early years learning framework and the Queensland kindergarten learning framework. I'm in Queensland, or guidelines, I should call it. Sorry. So, do they have like a framework similar to that in the UK, and what does that look like?
We do, and it's very similar to the EYLF. So I came over here knowing the EYLF off the back of my hand. Like I could probably talk you through every single bit of it. And then I got here and I was like, okay, new framework to learn. And it's called the Early Years Foundation Stage. It's just been updated this week. So on Monday it was updated.
Cool.
To kind of a new practice, which is very exciting. So if you were to literally Google EYFS, this would come up. And you would hear us talk about the EYFS a lot, and that literally is the Early Years Foundation Stage. And you're able to find that framework online. And it's very similar. They've got the different learning outcomes. So like you've got your partnerships with families and things like that. So there's a lot of transferable skills that come across with that framework. But something that if you were looking at taking a permanent job, it is something that they ask you about your understanding. Again, in Australia, you've got keeping children safe in education. So we work with that as well with safeguarding. It's so instead of child protection, it's called safeguarding here. And we support you with like some courses in that and getting you up to scratch with the language. Because something as simple as, I know if you were to call the EYLF something different in Australia in an interview, they're obviously going to go, okay, well, tell me a little bit more. So here they do ask about the EYFS.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. And what do they have like a kindergarten version of that as well, or it's just that EYFS?
So that EYFS covers children under 7. I'm going to say off the top of my head. Really testing me now. I've not looked at it for a little bit. So it is for that, and then when it goes to the older years, then you get into your key stages, which will take you into kind of your key stages are your like juniors and seniors, equivalent to Australia, which you can then find. I'm not overly understanding of the primary, as I've never stepped foot into primary, but we can always support you with the primary team, with the schools team. They will have a lot more information on what that looks like.
So are key stages like equivalent to our curriculum?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just because I just quickly typed that in while you were saying it. So
Yeah, no, you're fine.
Yeah. So instead of having like year
separate.
1, 2, 3, 4, they have like key stages 1, key stages 2, and it goes up to 5. So it is confusing, different to here in New Zealand as well, and how that kind of works.
Oh,
Yeah.
they only go up to 5.
Up to 5, yeah. So key stage 1 is 1 and 2 is essentially primary, 3 and 4 is secondary, and key stage 5 is at like VCE kind of level.
Wow. So are you saying like children in those levels are all on like learning the same thing? Like they've got like or a similar, I don't know, like I need to find out more about this.
Yeah,
so
it's some blogs we can send you. Yeah, it's it sounds really confusing and it is a little bit, but yeah, the UK team can definitely talk to you about this as well. And like if you have any more like any questions or like any more info you want,
yeah, okay,
understand it.
yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what does a regular nursery in a UK look like? So for example, like in my region there are like privately owned like I guess daycares, that's what they would call them, and I guess that's sort of a little bit similar to nursery, is that right?
So basically nurseries here are your early childhood settings. They're just called nurseries. So literally all of them are called nurseries. We have daycares here as well. So your long daycares. You've got your day nurseries, your family days, depending on where you're going. If you were looking at kind of your long daycare settings, which are typically open from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Your day is very similar to what an Australian day would look like. From Australia. It is, again, bringing the children in, collecting from the parents, signing them in, breakfast. You normally then do your kind of group time, free play. It then changes. A fair few nurseries don't have a garden here. So you would go to the park that's literally a block away, and you would do a few more excursions. There's a few more, I wouldn't say less regulations. The regulations are a little bit different here. So excursions are a lot easier to do. Normally the parents sign an agreement when they first start with the nursery that allows them to take the children out every day. So they go on quite a few excursions here. I know that was a daunting when I was teaching. And then again, if you have a nap, depending on the age of the children, nap times or structured learning times, afternoon tea, lunch, all that is very similar. You will find in like your school nurseries or nursery schools, that sometimes they have they're connected to a school, so they'll get the lunch delivered to them in a very that cafeteria way, where the lunch is then served to the children. So they might not have a chef on site. So there's lots of different options where you get to eat with the children as well, which is normally pretty decent food.
Cool. So is that the norm in the UK that usually they have cafeterias and lunches provided rather than like the packed lunchbox that we're used to in Australia?
Yeah, I've not seen a packed lunch in my whole 4 years here.
What? That's crazy.
Yeah, but I forgot that even happened. I've not had to open a banana in so long. I've not had to open a packet.
What about a yogurt?
Yeah, exactly. Those yogurts. No, it's all pretty much prepared for them. So I know this sounds very, very stereotypical. Do you know, like in America where you get those like trays, they're all sectioned? I worked in a nursery that each child had one of those trays, and it was dolloping on their yogurt in there, their their rice and their beans. And
that's
to
what I was
enjoy
envisioning.
that. Yeah. I didn't think it was real. It was real. And then I started to eat off them, and I felt very odd. Sitting in like those tiny chairs with the children eating off one of those trays, talking about how carrots make you see. So there is that. There may be nurseries out there that do the packed lunches, but it's really not that common.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry if anyone wants to cut in on me. I've still got a few more questions. So like I've noticed, because I teach in a kindergarten at the moment, so they're my children that come, a couple of 3, but most of them are 4. And to be honest, like toileting is becoming, and children not being toilet trained is becoming like more and more the normal. So like, what are you seeing over in the UK? Are you seeing that children in that kindergarten age group, like, do you know what I mean, that just school are also coming with those needs, or is this something that like the UK is just romping ahead of us and still keeping up with?
Unfortunately, we're very similar. I think COVID has had a big play on children's development, and I guess parent input in children's development. And we are finding that a lot of children are that little, not, I wouldn't say step further back in development. I think it's just a little bit delayed. So we are finding that there is a little bit more support with toileting, even something as simple as putting a jacket and shoes on, which we used to see those children that age be able to do, is something that we're having to have more support with. And that's something that we try and see where we can go. But I mean, unfortunately, it is quite common. There are some nurseries that are a little bit brutal in their onboarding of children, or their intake of children, where if they're not toilet trained, they won't be accepted into the nursery school. So it does depend on the nursery and the area sometimes. But you will find that most it's a balance, isn't it? You're not really able to tell exactly what it is.
Okay, no, that's good to know, because I'm envisioning, like, you know, there's a lot of like walking tours and excursions, and then if you've got like all of these children in nappies, essentially, like, what does that how do you respond to that and support children through that when you're, you know, not even in a setting where you
it's such a valid question, and I think the thing is, everything's really close-ish here. So depending on where your nursery is, depends on your location. So I've been with a nursery before. I've went and visited a nursery that the park was literally across the street. So they only had to cross the street, and they were in a large green space. And normally there is that option to then take 3 children on the toilet trip back into the nursery, because you're still in ratio, everyone's still covered, and there is that support. So every nursery will be different, obviously, but there is that kind of support.
Okay, cool. Have you had an experience in like forest schools or anything like along those lines?
Yeah, of course. A lot of our nurseries actually partner with forest schools, or are a forest school themselves. It's quite common over here to have forest schools, because a lot of the green spaces are a bit like a forest sometimes. In winter, it's a good way to get the children out, lots of mud play. So there is definitely that. It is a little bit different hours. So you might find that a forest school might be a little bit more sessional, where it is only that 2 hours in the morning.
Because I guess, like, sorry, I'm just speaking my mind here, but I guess like my dream role would be it's more like a forest school, or like a like what we would call like a bush kindy that also has access to a building, so you can do that real in and outside play. Like, where I am now, we have access, like we've got the rainforest, and like we do walks and all sorts of amazing stuff at the moment. So that's what I'm used to. So if I was restricted to like a room with no outside, I would just wouldn't like it, to be honest.
Completely understand. No, completely understand. And that's where we talk with you. We go, okay, great. This is your ideal role. Where can we find that? And I go, okay, well, this nursery hasn't got an outdoor space. Well, they do, and it's very, very limited. It's so we go, okay, well, we have another school that do indoor outdoor play, another nursery, sorry, they do indoor outdoor play all day. The doors are open and it is in a large green space, and they do forest school every Tuesday. This nursery is in a place called Abbey Wood, which by the sounds of it is literally Abbey Woods. So they are on the back of the woods, and they do something very similar where every Tuesday they're in a forest school. Unfortunately, the weather in the UK isn't always permitting forest school, but I guess that is the benefits of it, right? You wear an all-in-one waterproof piece with your I was going to say wellies, but the gumboots, aren't they? And supporting that. So that's where I guess we come in with making sure that you are the right educator in the right place, the right time. So we really try and create that for you.
Okay, yeah, that's really good to know. Awesome. Thank you.
No, thank you.
That's great. Anyone has any questions? Like,
sorry, just me again. Caitlin brought up something that I just wanted to touch base on again. I've been obviously recommended to you guys by a friend who done this before and traveled to UK with you.
cool.
And they've been telling me that apparently Central London, the pays are a bit different from any other places for the teachers. Is that like correct? Is that like the pays are a bit higher in Central London? Or is it just it depends on the actual nursery, not the locations?
Do you mean like compared to like in the UK or like in Australia or?
No, in the UK. Like
in the UK. Yeah, and that's the same with teaching salaries as well. Wages, it will differ depending. It's typically due, obviously, London, expensive place to live if you're living in like Wales, for example. The cost of living is a lot less there, so it does tend to be relevant to that. But yeah, we don't have a lot of like early childhood like nurseries. I'm outside of London, so yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Cool.
Perfect.
Like, that was great questions.
Yeah, went through a few there, which is great.
Yeah, it was good. Oh, well, thanks everyone for coming along. We really hope you enjoyed it, learned something new. And yeah, definitely if you have any more questions, feel free to email us and we'll have a follow-up email, like I said, mentioned, sent out end of the week. But yeah, if you have any friends, colleagues that you also know might want to work locally or over in the UK, we do have a referral bonus. But yeah, let us know. But otherwise, this will be sent out. We've recorded this as well, and that will be included in the email. But yeah, exciting times ahead.